It's time again for another installment of The Basics, and on today's show, in keeping with Magic the Gathering, I want to address and answer a couple questions that were posed to me about counters and life points. So without further ado, let's get right into this, shall we? Okay, so I'm going to start off with the life points first. And one of the things I'd recommend doing, and I've mentioned this on previous episodes, is get yourself a set of D&D or Dragon dice and use a D20 to show your life points. It's easy to move it around to whatever you're at in any stage of the game. And I like to use D12 and D10 for counters, which I'm going to get into in a minute. But life points, you start off with 20. And any damage that gets dealt to you from your opponent's creatures or spells or instant, if it goes through your own creatures and any defense you might have, it goes straight to you and it takes down your life points. And if you reach 0, you are dead and the game is over. And that is the whole objective of Magic, is to keep putting out creatures and spells and other cards to get your opponent down to 0 life. There are many ways that can happen. You have cards like Touch of Death, deals 1 damage to target player and you gain 1 life. So your opponent would take damage for every card like this you play and you would gain a life. So if you're down, you'd put it back up. Cards like Dry Spell deals 1 damage to each creature and player. So that can be huge, because if your opponent's playing black and he does that, say you only have 2 creatures out, they each take a damage, and so do you. If you have nothing out, and say your opponent has 2 of these guys, Scathe Zombies, so they're both a 2/2, which means attack of 2 on each card, that's 4. If you have nothing out at that time to defend, you're taking 4 damage to your life points. So if you started at 20 and he's already got those out, you've instantly moved down to 16, and so on and so forth. That's how life points work. Now, the more confusing part, which is counters, and I'm going to use Crypt Cobra to explain this. And you have to understand that counters in Magic were almost non-existent up until the expansion Mirage came out. And that's the one with the little tree, the palm tree, as its icon. Mirage introduced a lot of cards that deal with counters. And then the subsequent expansion, not too far after that, which was Portal, did even more with counters. So if you see here on Crypt Cobra, if Crypt Cobra attacks and is not blocked, defending player gets a poison counter. If any player has 10 or more poison counters, he or she loses the game. So if you're unable to defend against this card and your opponent has multiples, say he has 3 out like this and you can't block, not only are you taking damage from his attack, but you're getting poison counters. And that's where the D10 or the D12 comes in handy, because you can start counting up to the amount of poison counters that you have on you, or whatever the counter might be. There are so many different types of counters. And again, I find dice are the easiest way to keep track of counters, as probably will your opponent, because I don't know a Magic player right now that doesn't use dice for counters. But that's the gist of it. There are more cards over almost all the colors, if not all the colors, that deal in counters. And in my opinion, it's a giant pain in the ass, because you have to keep track of it, and it adds a new dimension to you getting your ass kicked if and when it happens. But it is what it is, and it became part of the game. Now, you really have to keep track of your life points throughout the game, even from the beginning. So that's why, again, I recommend a D20, and keep an eye on it. Keep glancing at your life point die every so often, so you know where you stand, in case the attacks your opponent puts out start getting heavy. And in regards to counters, you're not going to be able to stop every card out there that has counters, and you're going to need a lot of dice to keep track of that as well. So make sure you have a good bag of dice or a box of dice with you. And if your opponent is heavy with Mirage or Portal or a couple of those other expansions that deal with counters, you got to be prepared for that. So that's why I always say, even if your first card you put down is like a 0/3 wall, get that wall out right away. Or even get a 1/1 creature out, because at least you have some kind of defense right off the bat. That's why 1/1s, 2/2s, and some of those 0/3 and 0/4 walls are extremely valuable. Not just to help you save life points, but to guard against counters. Have a great day.